Someone says, what's the future? Vaughn Coleman.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to yet another episode of Vaughn Coleman Presents. We are at 52 episodes, and this is a special one. It's one I've wanted to do for a while, and it's different, and I'm happy about that because it really brings me back to some childhood memories, a lot of them, and stuff I want to reawaken. So, but before we get into that and all of that stuff, let's talk about where I'm at now. Well, and then don't worry, I know we're here for the guest, of course, as we should be. But I want to talk about my comic book that's in the work that is launching its crowdfunding campaign soon. And that, of course, is Phenomenova. Look at that. If you'll notice, you got a brand new title. I decided to add some text to the title. Freaked me out for a second because I'm not used to seeing it like this. But Phenomenova is my superhero comic. It is set 20 years after World War III and follows this teenage boy who was the son of a war hero, and he is struck by lightning while holding this mysterious crystal, but he finds himself awakening with lightning powers and super speed. And so, using his newfound powers, he decides to set out and make the world a better place, just like the heroes that came before him. But he finds himself in way over his head when he fights a supervillain way out of his league, stupidly trying to intervene with a heist at a nuclear reactor. I really wanted to harken back to the heroic ideals that made this genre great in an era of a lot of cynicism and deconstruction. I wanted to make this, an uplifting reconstruction of the genre and a reaffirmation of everything that makes it great. So you can check out the trailer here, which will be played at the end of the show, and check out some of the interior art. We do have some covers in the way. And if you join the sign-up list, you will be updated. We are going to have to push back the release date of the campaign. So join the sign-up list. That way you can be updated on everything. And also you'll get the snazzy trading card that you'll only be able to get through the mailing list. And there is an art contest for artists watching right now that you can submit. And if you win, it will be in the book. And there's going to be some alternate covers coming soon. So definitely check out this page. The sign-up list will be in the description. It'll be in the live chat. And you can also just go to rebeloasisstudios.com. But that's enough about me, all right? You've seen enough of me. If you're on my channel, you've seen way too much of me, probably. But you're still here. But who you're here for now, let's bring him in. Tim Jacobus. How you doing, Tim?
What's happening, Vaughn?
Yeah, nothing much. Just
that comic book looks pretty good. I'm not going to let it go off you yet. We're going to stay there for a minute.
All right, sounds good.
How long has that been in the works?
God. I came up with the idea when I was in second grade.
Yeah, that's a long time. Yeah,
so
you
on
might
and
want
off.
to pick up the pace a little bit.
That's what I keep. People are like, "Wow, you're accomplishing so much when you're young." I'm like, dude, no. Considering how many years I've had this in the kitchen, no. So, I've had this ever since I was a kid, and then it was like a movie idea. And then it went away for a while, and it's changed forms many times. But the core story that's been there since I was a kid stayed the same, just got better. So I'm glad it took so long because I'm a much better writer. So I rewrote it so many times. There were a couple of drafts where I was like, this is too far. And I was like, I want to make my young self happy while also doing something that older people will enjoy. And I think I did that. So the childish spirit and some of those ideas, throwing out the crappy ones and bringing in the new ones.
Very cool. Yeah, the art looks great too.
Thank you. Yeah, the art is. I just got some new pages in today, and some new stuff in the work. So, do you? I know you're an artist, and you've never done comic book work though, right?
No, comic book work again, it's an art form unto itself. It's like, if I played drums and you said, "Hey, you want to play lead guitar in my band?" I would, it's just, I taught at a comic book school for a couple of years. There's a comic book school here called the Joe Kubert Art School.
I didn't know you taught there.
Yeah. It's internationally known, and it's in the town next to where I grew up. And as a kid, I went to when I was like 14, I went there on Saturdays to learn how to draw Spider-Man for an afternoon. And I met Joe Kubert, who was the father, and then his two sons, Andy and Adam, who are crazy great comic book artists in their own right. And they're my age. So we met when we were young, and we're still friends now. But again, that's a whole way of learning that I didn't learn. So no comic book work. A couple of covers here and there, but that's about it.
Oh, what have you done covers for?
I did one of them for Adam Kubert, again, a million years ago. The most recent thing I did was a graphic novel that R.L. Stine wrote called The Stuff of Nightmares. I did one of the variant covers.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm sure that sold well. I'll have to check that out.
That's a good one. Yeah, it's cool because it's RL's work, but it's not geared for kids. It's a little rough around the edges. It's nice to see him be able to flex that muscle.
That's really cool. All right, I'm going to write that down. The Stuff of Nightmares. That's really cool. Because I haven't read this stuff since I was a kid, man. But I remember I wonder if it influenced my writing. It probably, everything I imagine influenced my writing, especially with how much I read Goosebumps growing up. It was crazy. But so you didn't go to the Kubert school then, but you did teach there.
Correct. Yeah. Like I said, I took a Saturday course when I was a kid. I went to a different art school called Spectrum Institute that was in New Jersey at the time. But when I was first trying to get started as an illustrator, Joe remembered me, super nice guy. And, I was at that stage in my career where I had done a couple of covers, but it wasn't enough to call it a full-time job. I still needed to maintain that part-time job. And Joe liked what I was doing. And that was one of the things that was great about the school and Joe was, he was always trying to, give you a leg up. So being able to teach a couple of days a week was, just enough money there to kind of push me over the hump and be able to pay the electric bill and, put gas in the car and continue doing my art.
That's awesome. Yeah. I've heard that kind of stuff about Joe a lot, that he was really just a great guy. And
a great guy but a tough guy too. You like the sergeant, he was a sergeant, and if you crossed him, he would certainly let you know. And as long as you were upfront with him, he couldn't have been a nicer guy.
That's really cool. I wish I had the chance to meet him. I haven't met either of the brothers either, Adam and Andy, but I know that, those two, obviously I've read some of their work. I have some of it on my shelf. Those guys.
Yeah, they're legendary.
Huge. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, it's funny because it had been years since I had seen them, and in the past 6 months, with comic convention being as popular as they are, I got a chance to see both of them individually at separate cons and catch up a little bit. So really good to see them.
That's really cool. That's awesome. And so you started out, so you were doing this teaching job. You said you had done a few covers. Well, before I get into what your first cover work is, I always like to ask, what got you into art in general?
Just enjoyed doing it. When I was a kid, the idea that you could do art for a living, that wasn't being conveyed to any of us at any time. My dad could draw, so I think I probably got a little bit of the skill from him. My best friend who lived next door, he liked drawing as well. So drawing was just part of the routine of things that we would do besides riding our bikes and playing baseball and swimming at the lake and throwing rocks and getting in trouble. So it wasn't until I was in my senior year of high school where I was finally introduced through a school program and saw what commercial art was, and that all this stuff I had been doing all along for fun and games could actually turn into something that I could make a living at.
That's really cool. So how old were you when you discovered that again? That was
18. Yeah.
okay.
18.
So that's good. So you wasn't like you didn't wait too long then to discover.
Yeah. Well, it still would have thought, I would have had at least like somebody would have at least whispered in my ear, "Hey, there's an art world out there where you can make money." So
yeah, that would have been
again,
nice.
yeah, a little ignorance is good too. If you know what you're up against, you may get chickened out. So I was glad I was kind of ignorant and said, "Oh, I could do this," and jumped right in.
Oh yeah. No, I mean that stuff's always helpful. But if you weren't going to go into the arts, then what were you planning on doing?
That's a good question. My father was, he didn't have a college degree, so he was going to make sure we all went to college. My sister completed her college career. I was able to talk my dad into letting me go to art school, which the school I went to, you didn't get a degree. It was more of a trade school. You came out with a certificate that said you put in, 35 hours a week for 3 years, and you passed their program. But to be perfectly honest, if I didn't get into the art field, I bet you I would have been in the trades, just because of the preference of working with my hands.
Gotcha.
And I don't know to what degree, if it would have been carpentry or what, but I'm pretty sure it would have been along those lines.
Gotcha. All right, that makes sense. So the trades, I mean, obviously that's very different, but you knew you wanted to go to college, and where did you end up going?
So I had originally decided that I was going to go to a college here in New Jersey. At the time, the college was called Glassboro State University. It's changed its name since then. And I started taking a course at the local at the local trade school and vocational school, like a VOTEC. And they were offering a commercial art program. And I was looking just to kind of fill up my day when I was a senior in high school. And that's where I was first introduced to art as a career. And then while 3 months into that program, I was like, oh, I gotta change. I gotta go to art school. So I was able, through the help of my instructor at the vocational school. When I told my dad I wanted to go to art school, he wasn't into it. He wanted me to get that college degree. And my instructor at the vocational school took some time and met up with my father and talked to him to let him know that, art was a real career, that I had a little bit of skill, and that for me to go to art school wasn't going to be a waste of time and money. And after that conversation, my father got on board, and I was able to go to art school. Now, I went to a small art school in New Jersey. We were so small, we were the downstairs to a doctor's office.
Wow.
Yeah. 20 of us in the graduating class. And but incredible teachers. And of course, in classes where there's 6, 7, 8 kids in them, there was no place to hide. You were, you had to produce, and you were getting all the attention that you could stand.
Yeah.
But again, great school, great teachers.
That's good. I mean, I always found that like smaller class sizes in some ways allowed for a better teaching experience, because it's like you can't escape, especially in the arts. Because there were times, if you had a big enough screenwriting class where you'd read a little bit of your script, or like you'd have someone read a bit, but you could tell that they had so much to get through that. Like workshopping in a class, for example, was tough. But did you get to workshop a lot and really spend time?
Yeah, that's it. I mean, that's such a good point. Yeah, where if the teacher's got to get through 35 students and get through all their work, there's only so many hours in the day. And the fact that there literally was 8 people in my illustration class. Tons of exposure. And what was great is part of the criteria for the teachers at this school was they had to be working artists.
Gotcha.
So not only were they, did they have a lesson plan and we were all working on a specific project, but then they would bring in art that they were working on for clients. They would talk about, what issues they're having with their clients, showing us stages of production in real life, real jobs, real paying jobs. So we got kind of a first-hand exposure to the business as it was unfolding.
Gotcha. That's great. That's great. So, I mean, were you all super close too in that class? Like,
yeah, it was small. Yeah. Like I said, downstairs to a doctor's office.
Yeah.
This wasn't an art school. This was, tight little rooms. We were right next to each other. But again, it was great. No, it was really great.
Kind of forces you to be social too, I feel like, because you can't hide in the back of the classroom at that rate. You can't just disappear in the crowd. There's no crowd.
And you, because the student body, for lack of better terms, you knew everybody in every grade. So it wasn't even like you were only knew the people who were in your group or your class. You knew the underclassmen and you knew the older kids as well. And you could see what they were doing. The school was, had kind of an open door policy, so you could walk around and see what other classes were working on and just see who the heavy hitters were. And we all hung out on the back steps and, between classes, and, people were smoking cigarettes and hanging out. And so, yeah, it was a great open, collaboration of people and thoughts and all different kinds of people. That was what I think surprised me the most. I expected people to be a lot like me, and there was people from every walks of life, and our only common denominator was we liked art.
That's cool. I always find that stuff fascinating, especially when you're creating that people have very different influences than you. That's why I always like to ask these kinds of things, is like, what inspired you? Because I find it's usually, I don't want to say it's not, but it's often not what people expect, or even just people's backgrounds and what led them to, because obviously, I love your art and we'll talk about that, of course, but I always am curious, the path that leads there, especially because that's where I'm at right now. I'm on the path part. This stuff is great. And you guys didn't hang out at the doctor's office, though? That's somewhere in campus?
Yeah. No, we didn't have no quick checkups or anything like that. No, we, again, hung around the outside of the place, got to know each other well. So, and the school taught a real wide array of disciplines, where we were talking earlier about the Joe Kubert School. Everybody who's going to the Joe Kubert School is going to be a comic book artist or an animator.
Right.
There's nothing else going on there. And the school I was at, it was a real wide range of teachers and what they taught. And, and all of us who left the school, almost everyone went on to an art career, but such diversification in choices that were made and paths that were taken and careers that were done. So again, it was a real wide open program.
Do you like any notable alums?
There's a guy you can look up, because he's still it's still we've always been friends, and he's somebody who, when we were in art school, was good, but he didn't have the mind-blowing talent that he has now. Now he's popular amongst illustrators. His name is Jeff Treveria, but just type in Jeff Etch, E-E-C-H. Jeff Etch. Jeff, Jeff, E-T-C-H, Etch. Echeverria.
I see Echeverria. How is that spelled? E-T-C-H?
Yeah, just try Jeff Etch first and do it in
Google. I'm doing it. Oh, and Instagram. Okay,
Yeah,
Instagram.
so, yeah, because that's where all, most artists, that's where they're hanging because
Yeah,
it's so visual.
I find Instagram algorithm has been horrible lately. I think it's because they actually want. This is what I've been universally the consensus is that it's because they want people to pay for the app, and that's why I get much less engagement, especially when it's something that's promoting business. Jeff Etch
Just go with Jeff Etchett.
Jeff Etchison
Nope.
Etch Etch of yeah. Sorry, it's not coming up.
All right.
ETC.
Okay, Echeverria. I'm just going to spell it for you.
Yeah.
ECH.
Oh, that'll do it.
Yeah.
That it was TC.
Barria.
Echeverria. Okay, let's see this. Oh, okay. Wow.
He does black and white. It's graphite and graphite powder. His stuff is incredible, and he's so prolific. His stuff, he's putting out stuff so fast, and I mean the ultra realism that he has. Again, anybody who's listening, take some time. Take some time right now. Go see a real artist. Skip me. Go take a look at this.
They're pretty good, but this stuff is great too. Wow.
It's real good. Anyway, so yeah, he's still making waves out there. But again, the guy I was talking about earlier, who was my best friend, who lived next door when I was growing up, he went to the same school. He became an art director in New York, made television commercials for years. Some won awards, and so again, it was all different disciplines and all different styles of people coming out of there.
Gotcha. That's great. That's fantastic. It's always really interesting hearing that. And is the school still there or no?
No, the school folded a few years back. It merged with another school. Long story. We don't need to cover it.
Okay.
Only cool if you went to school there.
Oh, gotcha. You mentioned you're from New Jersey because I'm from New Jersey too. Where are you from? Oh, I was about to ask you the same thing. I'm from Rumson.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
So I'm more North Jersey. I'm in Morris County. Yeah, I'm in a place called Bud Lake.
So that's why you're always I'll see you probably at Garden State this year.
Yeah. I'm definitely going to be there this year.
All right. Yeah, I should be there too.
Oh, very cool.
That's all right. That explains it. I always assumed you were from New Jersey because it's such a small show.
Yeah.
Some people do commute though, but yeah, that's great. So I have a question then, because you're into horror. This is a different thing entirely, but did you grow up with stories of the Jersey Devil at all?
Oh, sure. Yeah. We used to. So, we used to get away with a lot more stuff than kids can get away with now.
Mm-hmm.
So we would, when we were teenagers, we would, sleep out, which meant you just grabbed a sleeping bag and we would go camp someplace, and we would go walk the railroad tracks and look for the Jersey Devil. And the other one we looked for was the Hooker Man, which was a guy who was supposedly hit by a train and he lost his arm, and he would walk the tracks with a lantern trying to find his lost arm.
Oh, I think I've heard of. See, I almost wish I had more real life traumatizing ghost stories.
Yeah, because we talked ourselves into thinking we saw a lantern on the track. In the middle of the night.
I wish that I had. I remember at Sleepaway Camp was the closest to that. We all would kind of gaslight ourselves and each other into believing this story that I don't think any of us deep down believed.
Right, but it was fun to get going, and then you'd end up running, and all good.
I remember one summer. It was the first 2 summers we were obsessed with it. And by the third, we were kind of like, yes. The first day, we were like, this isn't really real. And we're like, yeah. It's like summer's gonna suck.
Yeah, you grow out of it for sure.
But it was like a bitter thing. It was like, yeah, we were dumb, but it was also like sad because it was like I kind of miss being terrified of it, which is funny. I guess makes sense considering how into Goosebumps and that kind of stuff I was. But so we talked about that. And before we get into your career in Goosebumps, did you have any favorite artists in particular?
Growing up, so my first love, my first dive into illustrators were again, I'm a guy I was a teenager in the 70s. and albums were the way we listen to music, and album covers were where all the great illustrators. I thought all the great illustrators were, and we all had crazy album collections. All of us had hundreds of albums, and you would sit on your couch and listen to them and just space out on the album art. So there was a guy who did all the album covers for the band Yes, and his name was Roger Dean. Again, another one for everybody to do their homework on after this is over.
Love to.
And he was the guy who made me change how I did my art to go from, drawing what you know and see to drawing from your imagination and creating stuff that it doesn't exist anywhere but inside your head.
Wow. That's so cool. So he changed it. And then when you were studying to be an artist, because you had mentioned that there was a variety of different kinds of people doing that, which is really interesting to me. Did you, and I imagine you got a variety of classes, probably not a sequential art then, it sounds like. Right?
No sequential art, no.
But what kind of artist were you studying to be?
So at first I wanted to be an album cover artist.
Right.
And then while I was in school, I had an instructor who did paperback book covers. And, he made it very clear. He goes, yeah, you can do album covers too, but they put out way more books than they put out albums. So, you may want to, again, it's the same thought process. You're still storytelling. And, but again, because you and I live in New Jersey, we had real exposure to New York City, and New York City where all the major book publishers were as well. So it was right in our backyard. Again, most people know this, but at that time, there's no internet, there's no social media. So the only people who were truly doing book covers in New York were people who lived in a 50-mile radius of New York. You had to be able to physically get there and shake people's hand and hand them artwork and pick up jobs and do all of that. So I was super lucky that my dad decided he wanted to live in Morris County. If he decided we were going to live in Pittsburgh, you and I aren't talking tonight.
Yeah, exactly. That's all. There's always those like lucky components to it. Did you ever get to do?
Yeah, that's it.
Covers?
What's that?
Sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to.
It's okay.
Did you ever get to do album covers ever?
It's funny. I do more album covers now than I did back when albums were the major form of listening to music. The renaissance or the kick back up in vinyl. It seems like every band, along with releasing their stuff digitally, is doing vinyl, and people are following the nostalgia and getting themselves turntables to listen to it.
Yeah, I have friends that listen to vinyl, and I'd be like, why do you guys listen to it? Is it just aesthetic? And they were like, no, it actually sounds better. And I'm like,
it does have a different sound.
And then they played it, and I was like, oh, it does.
Yes. I mean, if you're sitting in a room and you're all talking, it's hard to tell the difference. The minute you put on a set of headphones, you can feel it. It's definitely smoother.
That's awesome. I'll have to absolutely look into that. Well, yeah, I know. So headphones with the vinyl. Yeah, they've been telling me to get into it. My collecting arts habits. I've got I got to create more. It's not that I don't. I'll take it as I get it. My to read pile, my movie to watch list is over 1,000. Even within this interview, even while I'm interviewing someone, I'm always looking up. Okay, like now I have a new R.L. Stine book to check out. Always looking into that. So
I know. You have to limit yourself to what you get into because there's only so many hours in the day. And,
exactly.
You need to focus on a couple.
Exactly. And so, what was your first published work?
I believe it was in 84 or 80. So I went to art school. I graduated in 80, 81, the school year from 80 to 81. That teacher who was the book publisher, was the book cover artist, took me in to meet an art director, not to get me a job, but to just go in, watch him interact with the art director. The art director then reviewed my school portfolio, gave me some pointers, and told me what to do before I came back to the city again. And basically what he did was he went through my portfolio and he pulled one piece of art out and he said, this one's good. He said, the rest of it looks like student work. He goes, you can't come here and bring student work. You're not going to get a job. So what you need to do is now go home, and I want you to do 6 or 8 new paintings that look exactly like book covers. The book cover dimension, so I would just look at it and go, oh, I could see how the text is going to go on the top, and this is the right dimensions, all that stuff, and decide what what's your thing. And so I took the time. It took a couple of years to get that portfolio together, and went back and started knocking on doors. So around 85, 84, I got my first cover for a book publisher called DAW, D-A-W. DAW stands for Donald A. Walheim. He's a big time science fiction guy. He was a real pioneer in the business, and he was still alive at the time, running the company. And actually, I went there by mistake. I thought I was going to Dell Books, and I went to DAW Books instead. And his wife, again, another elderly woman, was the receptionist, and she actually liked my ex-wife, who was always out there helping solicit work with me. And I got in, and he gave me my first cover. So it was called Found Wanting, and it's an image of a woman who's teleporting into this triangular shaped stone monolith, and you can see some planets in the background. Sometimes you can find it on the internet, sometimes you can't.
Found Wanted or Wanting?
Found Wanting.
Found Wanting. I see 2 books with that title. Who was the writer?
I don't know. You're hurting me now.
You don't even remember the writer?
I don't remember anything. Come on, man. That was 35 years ago. Come on. I'm glad I could remember the title tonight.
There we go. Well, that's it. Is this it?
Oh, you know what? That is my cover, but that's not the one. I'm thinking that's my second one.
Oh, okay.
What was the title of the first one? Oh, wow.
Let me see if Google can help me out with this.
Wow. So what was that one called?
Let's see if Google knows.
Yeah, I was just going to
better
say
than you.
Yeah, just
No A3.
Yeah, that was like the 4th one.
Oh, okay. So they're wrong.
Yeah. So what do they got first on that list? I can't read that.
That's it. No A3.
No, there was one before it. Damn. What was it called?
If anyone finds the answer,
I'll remember it the minute this this is over.
Feel free to comment if any of you detectives watching this figure it out. But all right, so then you did that. That was sounds like that was really cool. And then from then on, you kept going.
So I did a couple with him, and then ended up over at Dell Books, and was able to do a piece with this guy named Jerry Cunahan. He was the art director, and spent a lot of time on this African wildlife painting, which I wasn't an animal illustrator, but he had me doing this piece. And the main contribution that I got out of working with him was he told me I needed to find myself a rep. So at the time, maybe I had a half a dozen books, 8 books covers done. And I got a rep, and his name was Saul Baraka, and Saul was had a whole group of artists that he represented. So the beauty of that is you get to stay at home and paint, and he goes around and gets you the work. Also had all the connections, so it was the ideal situation, and so that's when the doors started to open, and we were working with a more varied group of publishers, and I started to get some work consistently.
That sounds great. That's really cool that you finally you got it through that. And so did that lead you to Goosebumps?
All right, we're going to jump back real quick.
Oh, okay.
The name of my first book is The Fugitive in Transit.
All right, let's check this. I'm going to look this up because I want to see this.
I have it here. It's there if you look for it. Edward Llewellyn is the author.
And you never, did you ever meet these? Was it normal?
No, you never meet. It's funny. They keep illustrators and authors away from one another. I was doing Goosebumps covers for 2 years before I shook R.L. Stine's hand.
Wow, that's crazy. For 2 years?
Yeah, we were. Yeah, there it is. That's the
wow.
one.
That's an awesome cover.
Thank you.
See, I love one of the things. I mean, especially because I'm working with like cover artists. I think just regardless of the medium, coming up with an impactful cover, like it's a deceptively simple thing.
Right. I like this one because it's very graphical, but I got my chance to do a real rich illustration on top of it being, a nice, a triangular, 2 triangles kind of put together as a composition, but still was able to render. And at the time, so I'm working in acrylic, and it's a combination of brush and airbrush. Airbrush is what gives it that smooth blended quality to it. And the original artwork for this piece of for this book cover was 20 inches by 30 inches.
Wow, that's nuts. And do you ever keep any of your original artwork?
I have most of it. But surprisingly, the way the business was set up, it wasn't like I made any deal. This is how it operated. You would turn your artwork in. They would hang on to it for anywhere from 3 to 6 months. They would take photographs and make plates and do everything they were going to do. And when the book came out, they would just make sure they had everything they needed. And then they would give you your artwork back. So most of what I ever created, I eventually got back. But for Scholastic and Goosebumps, they wanted to keep the art, and they asked me, and I said yes. Of course, they in saying we want to keep the artwork, they also said we will give you more money.
Yeah, right. That's an important part.
And at the time, it's funny, you don't think about it, and just for me, being a broke artist, it was like, yeah, whatever. I'll take the money. I'll take the money. I'll take the money.
Mm-hmm.
And now that I'm a little older and a little wiser,
that's how they get you.
I might have pulled the trigger a little quick on that one. It might have been a good idea to sit tight and hang on to that art.
Have you sold any of your covers that you've gotten? Obviously, it sounds like you didn't get to sell any of the Goosebumps ones, which
no, none of the Goosebumps one. But I've sold other pieces, yes, that were originally a book cover that I then framed, and through one way or another, I was able to whether it was through a gallery or just on my own, I was able to sell that. Yeah, so there is a secondary market.
That's great. I know that a lot of comic artists do that too. I know that used to be a big thing where that's interesting though. I didn't know that they could offer that they had any interest in just saying, hey, we'll buy this from you and then we will sell it. That's really
well.
Or did they
that wasn't the idea behind it. So again, a million years ago, no digital anything. So they were afraid that either the plates would get lost or the original photograph that they took of the artwork would get damaged. So they wanted to have the art there so that at any time they could get another reproduction off of that piece of art. So, years later, then, scans and digital art came along. So now they don't need them because they have, infant, they have solid transparencies and solid scans that are there on digital files that can't get lost. And but that was the idea, was to have the artwork, in their back pocket instead of keep shipping it back to me and then going, oh man,
Right.
the Night in Terror Tower got damaged. Can you please ship us that artwork? And then risk losing it in Federal Express or it getting damaged. So yeah,
Right.
that's why they bought it up front. To my knowledge, they didn't sell any of it. I know a couple of art directors got a couple pieces here and there. I know there's a couple hanging in the lobby at Scholastic. And I think most of them are just stored away, which is, that's kind of a crime. I wish they were.
That's a shame. That's a real shame.
I wish they were out where people could see them.
And that's crazy. That's so many covers, and it's just nuts.
There's a lot. I did over 100.
Yeah, I bet so many. And I guess my question in regards to that, Goosebumps, again, this thing takes off. It's still a hit. I grew up with it. The Scholastic, I noticed anything that gets to deal with Scholastic, that's perfect for getting it in the hands of kids. And it's something we'll remember.
Their original business model was academic books, math books, geography books, history books. So they already had the inroads with the schools, and then they branched out the types of books that they would do. And then, all of a sudden they're doing other stuff. And then by the time Goosebumps came along, that pipeline was already built. So we could just funnel that stuff. You couldn't escape it if you wanted to.
Oh, yeah. That's really cool. So how did you first get, now that we're there, how did you first get into Goosebumps as the artist?
So I had done a couple of covers for Scholastic. So mostly kid stuff, but I had done some other covers as well. And I had proven myself to be responsible, consistent, on time, all that stuff that really is more important than being the greatest artist in the world, because it's a production business. And when Goosebumps came along, they knew that the idea was to make books fast. And they were, they felt confident that I could, keep the pace and still create some decent looking pieces of art. And I had just kind of finished a couple of things up. So I wasn't busy. So, coach turned around and looked on the bench to see he could pull into the game. And I happened to be sitting there. So kind of, if I was busy on another project, it just goes to the next guy. So again, there's the bus pulled up and I was smart enough to get on.
I just wrote this down. Consistent, responsible is all time more important. All right. So making sure that I do that. But anyway, I'll continue to neglect my responsibilities for now. So wow, so that's great. So when they offered it, was it one book? Did they offer, or was it a package deal?
Well, what they did was from my original understanding was that there was going to be 4 books, or 6. 4 was what I remembered, but again, it gets a little murky. It doesn't matter. But I had never done any horror at all. Kids, otherwise, no horror work. I had done some science fiction, some fantasy, but there was another artist named Jim Thiessen who was a heavy hitter, had been around a few more years than I had done a lot of horror work. So they let me do book number 1, Stay Out of the Basement, and they had him do book number 2. I did book number 1, Welcome to Dead House, and he did book number 2, Stay Out of the Basement. And what they said to both of us was, we're going to let you guys do a cover each. We're going to produce them both, and then we'll decide what style we want to go with. And that person will get to do the next couple of books. The underlying current to Goosebumps was this was dead on arrival. This was going nowhere. It was probably going to fail. When they approached me about doing the cover, they said, listen, it's going to be a couple of $100 less than we're used to paying you, just because there's no budget, because this isn't going anywhere. So
Wow.
If you don't want to do it, that's okay. But, we hope you do it. And I was that guy also, where a job in your hand is better than one that might come along. So I took I read the first chapter to Welcome to Dead House, and I went, oh, this is cool. I want to do this. So got a chance and did the first cover. And when they saw both my cover and Jim's, what people decided was, well, his stuff was way more realistic. My stuff has a little bit of a cartoon flair to it. And I did the real rich colors. And they thought that those two elements made the books less scary. And that was the major concern, was let's not make anything too scary. Let's keep it as light as we can. So due to those two main factors, they decided that I got a chance to go ahead. And again, it wasn't like you won the lottery. It was, I got to do the next couple of books. And so we didn't, we started to do the covers, and they were all fun. And there was still, I learned this years later that there was still talk about canceling the series early on, because the numbers weren't great. And somewhere around book number 9, 8, 9, it just took off. There was no rhyme or reason other than you guys were all telling one another that these books were cool. And then you probably, instead of just seeing them in your school library, and maybe you were experiencing some frustration and not getting your chance at getting one of those covers or getting one of those books because it was constantly taken out, you all started to go to the bookstore and buying them. And then that's when the numbers really shot up. And it was great because, the series, they said, okay, this is rolling. Don't anybody mess with this. So early on, nobody was paying attention to what I was doing. They kind of let me do my thing on my own. And then when it took off, they said, don't anybody try to reformulate this. Let's keep doing what we're doing. And for the next 10 years, I got a chance to do a whole lot of whatever I wanted to do. RL was putting out great stuff, and he was writing the book at the same time I was doing the cover. He would give me the title and a couple of sentences of what the book was about. And I would put together some sketches. Me and the art director would work on that. They'd go to a meeting, come back and go, all right, yeah, do sketch number 2, make that the painting. And I would move on to the final art. And because we had such a quick turnaround, nobody was being ultra critical on my artwork. And so it was like, get it done and do the next one.
That's awesome. Sorry, I had, while you were talking, I was listening because that was so cool. And it was every time my camera just totally kaput. So I just wanted to get back. That's so crazy. So they didn't expect this series to go past 4 or 6 books.
No, they didn't expect it to get off the ground at all. And that wasn't only limited to talking to me. RL got kind of the same message, and he's even said that he wasn't thrilled about doing another series because he was doing Fierce Street at the time, and he was perfectly happy where he was.
So he already, because I didn't know that much about RL. It's crazy.
I didn't either. I didn't even know who he was, and they're telling me, they're going, oh, you're going to get a chance to work with R.L. Stine, and they went, okay.
That's how it goes. I mean, it's always, because I think about this, that like people don't realize the years you put in between everything, the years the artist put in as it's all going. and it's just crazy. And then finally, you see the finished product.
Yeah, and we were probably 6 months ahead. So, the ones we were working on weren't going to see the light of day until a half a year later. So, I was constantly on to the next thing. So, by the time that you saw it in the bookstore, it was, I don't mean to say this in jest, but, it was almost anticlimactic. It was like, yeah, I already know that one. That was, wait till you see the next one. That was always what was going on in my head.
How far ahead were you then?
I think 6 books.
Wow.
Yeah, because we're one a month.
Coming out.
One a month. Yeah.
One a month?
Yeah. RL, he was the man. He was cranking them out like nobody's business. Yeah, guy's a machine. So, I mean, doing one cover a month, that's not hard compared to writing a whole book.
That's nuts. So how long would it take you?
I could do a cover from start to finish, sketches and the final art in a week. So back then I was cranking out along with at one Goosebumps a month. I was doing other covers as well. So a 4 cover month was not outrageous. That was, that was busy. I did 5. That was under stress. 3.5 would be nice.
Wow.
So yeah, so we kept that pace for a long time.
That's insane. So I didn't know, because I didn't know the order. I didn't know the frequency that the books came out. One a month. That is crazy. And it was, I mean, so how long did it go? At what point were you like, okay, this is stable?
Oh,
like it's not getting canceled. Like,
probably, when we were like at a year and a half, then they started to go, okay, we're going to give you a raise, and this is going to go on for a while. And not only will we pay you more for the new ones, we're going to give you a retroactive pay for all the ones right from the beginning.
wow.
Because there was money in it was working. So so they, did it. So at that point you go, oh yeah. And by then, I had figured out, seeing them everywhere, you're walking around, not only are they in bookstores, they're in supermarkets, they're in, they're everywhere. And you're going, oh, this thing's really happening.
That's nuts. That's so crazy. I wanted to ask, so what kind of information are you given before you do these covers? Because these covers would really get, well, they had to get, I mean, I imagine, it's funny you said you started with Don't Go in the Basement, because that was one of the ones I did read,
that's funny. Yeah, that's a good one. That's a real good story.
I remember, because one of the things I remember was that I remember I'd spend so much time deciding which book I wanted to read, because they'd all have great titles and great covers. And it wasn't even called Don't Go in. I have thought it's like this Mandela effect. I thought it was Don't Go in the Basement. It's Stay Out of the Basement.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's crazy. That was the first one, because I was thinking about that one. I was going to use that as an example, because that is such a cover that is like deceptively simple, in that it's like, if you don't know what's going on in the book, it's like a green hand grabbing something. But once you've read it, you like flip back to the cover, I remember reading it years ago, and I was like, oh, it's like a creepy hand. And I'm like, wait a minute, I know what that means, having read the book. What information did they give you on that cover?
So again, that's the one the other guy did, Stay Out of the Basement.
I'm so sorry, Mike.
It's all right. It's all right. But it was always the same. RL was writing the book at the same time I was doing the cover. He would only give me the title and a couple sentences. So super minimal amounts of information about the book. Sometimes it was real easy. Yeah, even the title alone could get you the whole cover. Scarecrow Walks at Midnight. All right. I know what,
there we go.
What we're doing. It's all right there in the title. Other ones were a little bit tougher, but having less information is better than having too much information. because you're compelled to put, if they give me lots of details, I'm compelled to put those details into the art. So if you just give me a very light overview, then I'm allowed to kind of go, well, they didn't say this couldn't happen, so I could concoct some interesting backgrounds and or really elaborate on what the creature looks like.
Gotcha. That's so fascinating. Because I'm struggling with that balance too as a writer. Is the difference between overwriting and not, and I'm learning to be less controlling and going, okay, they know what they're doing. But sometimes obviously you want to know more, but I find that just fascinating because it's like just hearing the concept. Because obviously I don't know how many pages those books were. I forget. In hindsight,
So that's something. If you are writing, but if you're an active writer, it's probably been a while since you picked up a Goosebumps, and I just did it recently. And it's very interesting to go back now because you're not reading it for the entertainment value. You're reading it as an adult, or in your case as an expert, and you see the structure that he's put into place. So a Goosebumps book was about 120 pages, 125, something like that. But there were 10 chapters in that 125 pages. So you got 10, 12 page chapters. And every end of every chapter, there was a hook. He made something happen. It was always that thing where you went, he left you hanging, and then you'd go, all right, one more chapter. It's only 10 more pages. I got to keep going and find out what happened, what just happened. And he continued that hook all the way to the end. And at the end, every single time, there was a twist or a reveal or something spectacular happens at the end. And like I said, when you see how quickly he would set up this thing, because he only had 10 pages, and he would set up that hook, but he kept doing it every time. And really kind of brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, I need to go back. I have the sudden urge to go back and reread those books, as if my to-read list isn't long enough. And I was looking.
What's good about it is it's short, and it's your commitment will be wicked quick, and 120 pages, and it's 120 pages for an 11-year-old. So
yeah,
you can get through it pretty quick.
That's awesome. Yeah, I know. I definitely intend to go back. Monster Blood was my favorite. And for some people who never finished that series, that was another. Okay, so like he would give you this. So he would give you these descriptions, however brief, come up with a cover. I guess what I want to know is, were there ever cases where, like, did you ever do thumbnails or no?
Yeah, always did tons of thumbnails, but the thumbnails were only for me. I would do pages of thumbnails prior to picking a set of solid ideas. I did 3 sketches for every book and 3 separate concepts altogether, so that it wasn't just the same thing twisted over twice. So thumbnails definitely were a major part of what I did.
And were there ever any rejected covers or any?
No, because you're submitting 3, so there's always something there. Like if you're only putting all your eggs in one basket, if you go, oh, this is it, I have one great idea, I'm sending it in, and if they don't like it, then they don't like it. So I mean, they liked most of what we did. And the only changes they would have is they would do something like, oh, we like the main character in sketch 2, but we like the background in sketch 3. Can we put those 2 together? And so it was as simple as combining a couple of images at the same time. But there was never, I never had an issue of, nah, you haven't got it right. This isn't it. This isn't working. All the final art just went in. I only had to change maybe 1 or 2 paintings after they were finished. They just again, we were on such a tight turnaround. There really wasn't a lot of time to mess with it. So
it's not all right. So maybe that's a good thing then, the tight deadlines, because I remember when I was doing my first work, it was like very much like, no, this needs to be this, and then suddenly it's a deadline. You go, it's fine, and sometimes that leads to artistic freedom.
Well, most books that I ever worked on, there was a lot of external input, and there were a lot of changes, and there were times where whatever my original concept was, and you'd get to the final art, and then the changes would start. By the time you got done with that, it didn't look a lot like the painting that you had imagined it was going to be. I'm not saying all my ideas were the great ones. I'm just saying it looked different. Sometimes it looked better. Sometimes it looked worse. But that was never the case when we were doing Goosebumps.
So it was always, so you did, when you said you did 3, did you do 3 complete pieces of art, or did you do?
No, these were 3
That's
8.5 by 11 drawings. Yes, these were pencil only, and no, pencil work only. And then we would never go, once we went to color, that was when we, enlarged it and really committed to it.
And did you ever did he ever tell you what he wanted on the cover, or was it more just here's what the book's about?
Yeah, just what the book's about. And, not only was it RL, but every author is out of the loop when it comes to cover art.
It's probably because they know
he only saw the final piece. They would, send him a reproduction of the final art. Never had a say in the matter. Never had never got a chance to put his 2 cents in. I know he gets to now, but back then, he would only see final art.
I wonder if he do you know? So when you met him in person, did you ever ask him what he thought, or if he
it was it took, like I said, it took me a couple of years before I even shook his hand. We became fast friends, but almost always we just talked about everything else other than work. But recently we've gotten a chance to do stuff online. We've done comic conventions together where we speak at the same time. And I've heard stories that I never knew until now. And but no, he's been very supportive, and he liked my artwork, and he's always been again, he's been super, super supportive over the years. And yes, the short answer is he liked what I did.
That's great. That's great. I mean, especially with how many you turned out. I mean, I can't imagine. It's for me to. I've only seen this final product. That's the only thing that matters in the end. And I mean, these would always grip me. I remember it was a thing too. The teachers would actually get. One teacher, I remember, was very annoyed with me because she wanted me to read all these more academic books, and I'd always go to Goosebumps, and she brought this issue up to my mom, and I was like they're in Scholastic. You did this to yourselves. I think some of the teachers might have started hating you guys, honestly, because the kids.
Well, you're right. There was they didn't know what it was, and they weren't sure about it. But then in the early 90s, there was no book market for boys. There was books were strictly a girl based thing.
Really?
Yeah. And
so what did the boys get?
Goosebumps originally was geared towards girls, but you guys started being, you guys got hooked and you started reading them. And then all the teachers at first were like, I don't care what these things are. The boys are reading. I don't care. This is great. Let's go. But to your point, then it becomes the only thing that they will read. And then there's the pushback of, okay, you can't do nothing but Goosebumps. But I know plenty of guys your age who got through their early
it helped me learn
elementary school years by reading just Goosebumps for their reports.
Dude, I need to get back to those books, man. I mean, they really inspired. I remember they would always end on this note that would be like, I wanted more. And for some reason, I never finished the Monster Blood series, even though Monster Blood was my favorite. I don't remember why. But I just I stopped the flow of it. And I've always intended.
Yeah, in the original series, there were 4 of those. So
yeah, I only read the first, and I started.
Well, and here's the other part of it. Depending on what age you were, if you were 11 years old when the first book came out in 1992, and we're putting out a book a month. At some point, you're going to age out, and we're still making books. So, you have to be a wicked, prolific reader to be making sure that you get through all of them. And so it's not out of the question. The very last book in the Goosebumps series, number 62, was Monster Blood 4. So you would have had to hang out all the way till the end.
That's nuts. Monster Blood was my favorite when I was little, but I loved Shocker on Shock Street was one of my favorites.
That was a fun one. Yeah.
There were I swear there were a lot of times I remember being in indecision for a lot of time where there were a lot of books that I was like, I want to read that, not read this one. And then sometimes I wouldn't read because I couldn't decide. But like by the time, so I was born in 99. So by the time, it was almost like I didn't even know when these came out. Like I learned later on that even then I don't know the exact dates, but
but they were, again, they were the numbers were crazy. I think, again, 380 million books sold.
Oh yeah, I contributed to.
Right. So those are crazy numbers. So your school's packed with them. And even though there's more coming out, the older ones aren't going anywhere. They're still around. And whether you started reading them in 98 or 99, they're all there. You're picking them up out of order. It's not a linear thing, which was great. That every book was its own standalone story, different kids, different monster, different environment. So the excitement was, for me especially, what are we going to do next? If I was doing, Harry Potter every month, it definitely wouldn't have been as much fun.
Right. I mean, this is so interesting, the way you went about it, and that it was the color palette, because looking at it now in a whole new light is so fascinating.
That was a pure exercise because they said they liked the colors. So I spent, there was not a significant, but there was a special point in the production of my artwork where I would take time and just work on the colors before I went to the final canvas. And I had made a plan. I would do what's called a color comp. And I had all my colors worked out before I went to that final art. And I tried my best to make each one of them unique and not repeat the same 3 colors or the same 6 colors, to mix them up so that they all look different.
Yeah, I mean, you ask anyone, they can close their eyes, they could think of a cover, they could think of a few. I mean, it helps that they're literally in the background of this video.
But
outside of that.
So, and then the other thing that was interesting about it, because everybody can see what we're talking about because you have them on the screen here, but not only did the artwork have interesting colors in it, but then the book designers then picked up those colors and put them in so that the logo was a different color on every book. The background behind the logo, the drips that were made up the frame were a different color. So each book was its own piece of art and could stand alone and was different than any other book.
Yeah, as I'm learning that this, as frustrating as it is that things take as long as they want to, one thing I'm learning even today as I was working on the cover for my comic is just like, okay, caption boxes are here. Where's the logo placement? And I'm learning, okay, sometimes you just, everything is some kind of some design. I was always like,
it's a composition. Yeah, the whole thing is incredibly thought out, and you have to have it. You got to get it, especially back when it was traditional art, and you had to, make sure you had one shot to get it, put it in that place. Now that the world is digital, you can, there's a lot of cheating that can go on now and, fix those compositional errors. But back then, no, you had to have it together.
It's great. It's so cool seeing all that just come together in such a way. So what was the first book you did? Because you didn't do Don't Go in the Basement. That's the only one you didn't do?
The first one I did was Welcome to Dead House.
Okay.
Then I did all 62 of the original series, and I did the series 2000, 26 of those, and a whole bunch of special editions. So 100 and something. Okay. Now, when we finished the first 62, an art director came up to me and said, "Wow, you did them all except for Stay Out of the Basement and Be Careful What You Wish For." And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Well, we're going to do them. We're going to put them out again. So do those 2 covers." So there is a version of Stay Out of the Basement that's mine, and there's a version of Be Careful What You Wish For that's mine. So when I say I did all the Goosebumps covers, I'm not lying. I did them all.
Okay. I think I found yours. That's the coloring looks totally. Is this just the printer or?
I don't. Yeah, it's the one where the plant dad is in the basement.
Yeah. So
which
one is this one? Is you? Oh, okay, yeah. Because I was gonna say that looks nothing like. Okay.
So they've redone them a couple times, but that one right there that you're showing is mine.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The original.
This definitely I see.
Yeah, you can see my flair to that.
So with these little captions, that's not included in part of the description. That's added after.
That's all added on later. Yeah,
I love hearing about all these little details of the.
There were a bunch of really talented people who got their chance. You know, the logo was designed by a art director named Holly Rubin. She might have been even the one who wrote the little blurbs that are on every cover.
That's so cool.
And what also was fun, and people mention it all the time, is the embossing that was done on the Goosebumps letter. So Goosebumps actually had a tangible physical goosebump bump, and you could touch it. And they paid a ton of money to emboss those books. That was, that was a super expensive item, and they did it for a long time, but eventually they stopped the embossing just because, again, very costly. Yeah, but it's something that an 11-year-old thinks is the coolest.
It's really cool. It's weird. I'm trying to think. I'm in a weird place in my life where I'm trying to think as an adult and then also as a child, because you have to create as an adult and then you have to remember what the kids want. Yeah.
It's a interesting thing, for me creating art. My girlfriend tells me I'm just a 12-year-old anyway. So it's hard for me to do grown-up stuff. I'm real good at doing the kid stuff.
That's good. I mean, it's a good trait to have, though. And it's a great trait to have because, look, the adults, we're all kids. Like, we all had stuff that we grew up with as kids. Did you ever have covers rejected because they were too scary?
Not because they were too scary. The story I tell regularly because it was fun and funny. The one change that I had to make was Revenge of the Lawn Gnomes is a cover where there's 2 gnomes on a lawn, and they're around some very typical 1990s lawn ornaments, and in the original, in the painting, there's 2 gnomes. One of them has his arms crossed and the other guy is scratching the side of his head. In the original art, the guy who's scratching the side of his head had his finger jammed up his nose and was picking his nose. And when I turned the art in, everybody just, were laughing their asses off. That's so funny. We definitely gotta, this is great. And then at the last minute, because all those books were being shipped into schools, somebody asked nicely if we could take the finger out of his nose so we didn't encourage nose picking in school. So,
that's a good one.
Yeah. So again, not a very easy change for me. I sell a print of this, and I've got a bunch of them still. So it'll be a while before I reprint. But what I should have done was take the time to go back and retouch it and put his finger back in his nose so that everybody can see what it was.
Do it a limited edition too, or something like that.
Yeah, you could do that. So, I mean, at some point we'll sell through them, and I'll do it on the next printing.
That's awesome. So did you, because I know you go to a lot of cons, which ones sell the most? Which ones are the most popular?
Top 3. And it's very close, and it depends on what show you're at. Number 3 is The Haunted Mask.
Okay. Oh, that one's a classic. Yeah.
Yep. and then number 2 and number 1 run neck and neck, and one may pass the other every couple of weeks. Night of the Living Dummy and A Day at Horrorland.
Yep, that makes sense. What's
Yeah.
funny is I never read those, but they were always ones I wanted to.
Yeah, so again, those are the ones that it's not even close. There's no close, number 4, not even remotely near any of it. Those, I could just keep those 3 and everybody would be happy.
For some reason I was like, I'll always get to those because those were like the big ones. Those are the most.
Yeah, they were the heavy hitters, and those were excellent stories, and they also had a presence on TV as well. That seems to be another factor in what people remember. So if the story was good and the cover was cool and there was a television episode, that pushes that cover's popularity.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask about that because I remember I don't know if I first got into it through the show or the books. The books obviously were superior. But you wanted to ask.
It's great. Come on, it's great.
I have nostalgia for it, and
it's way more fun to watch now.
Yeah,
and you could, like back then, you go, okay, that's kind of state of the art. Now you go back and you go, oh man, they had a limited budget. It's funny, the clothes, the hairstyles, the cheesiness, the campiness. It's so much fun to watch it now.
I need to all right, that's another thing I should do. I should go back and just like get some friends together and just rewatch the Goosebumps.
Absolutely. You'll crack a couple of drinks,
crack
a couple beers, and it'll be a very entertaining weekend.
I should really, because I bet there's a lot of people my age that want to revisit this I knew, and that's the thing, I knew before this interview that I was going to want to, and yep, absolutely. That's so fascinating. So when you watch the show, or did you do any of your art? Did they use any of your art for the show or any of the?
Oh, they used the cover as reference. I was not in any way active. They didn't call me or ask me anything.
They should have given you a cameo.
Yeah, that would have been fun. That would have been fun. But I like to tune into the show because I wanted to see how they were going to use that art. So once in a while, the television show was very true to my original concept, and they did their own thing. And other times they had to, kind of rewrite the whole story because they didn't have a budget to be creating, some wild thing that I created that I had, and at no time was I ever thinking, oh, this might go on TV, so let me make it so it's TV friendly. So I like to just tune in to just go, all right, let's see what they did. And I think I like the ones where they went off and did their own thing.
Really?
And, I was way more entertained by that because, it surprised me when they did something that was kind of what I did. I went, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Did you, what did you think of like the effects when they did try to do what you did?
Again, they didn't have much of a budget. I'll tell you what was great though, when, all the years later and they did the Jack Black movies and there was a real budget, and to see them take my stuff and bring it to life, that was awesome.
Did they give you royalties? Really awesome.
What's that?
Did they give you royalties for that?
No.
That's a universal constant with artists, comic book artists. The creators of Bane for The Dark Knight Rises didn't even, like my interview with Graham Nolan, I was talking to him, didn't even put his name in the credits. Did they at least put your name in the credits?
So what they did, so here's, no, my name wasn't in the credits. But,
wow. But you had one artist to include.
Wait. I hate saying stuff like this because it makes it sound like they weren't nice to me. They were. So at the end of the first Jack Black movie, Jack Black, R.L. Stine, walks up to the glass case. He sees the Invisible Boy typing. He turns to the camera and he screams, the camera zooms in on him, and he morphs onto a Goosebumps book cover, and the movie ends. So when they were putting that together, they called me up and they said, we were trying to put this Goosebumps cover together. It doesn't look like one. You know what you're doing. Please paint this cover with Jack Black on the Goosebumps cover. So I got a chance to create a piece of the artwork that's right at the end of the movie. And then at the end, they also took my covers and they did some sort of, computer technology, and they were able to take the original art for The Abominable Snowman of Pasadena and Shocker on Shock Street, and they did short little animations. So the Abominable Snowman is shaking the lamppost, and the praying mantis from Shocker on Shock Street is tilting his head and moving his hands. So they took some of my art and they brought it to life while the credits rolled. So no, they were really nice to me.
Shocker on Shock Street was underrated. That was one I remember that for a lot of those endings really disturbed me because they'd end it on a note where I was like, oh, because like kids stuff, you normally have these happy endings. They'd always, every time I'm like, everything's, and it would actually kind of bother me as a kid because they'd have these endings that are like don't go in the basement and have this ending, or stay out of the basement, had this ending where I'm like, okay, it's all resolved. Is it? And I'm like, come on, man. I just read this whole book, and then, is there a sequel? Of course there isn't. So I just have to. It's nuts. Goosebumps, Horrorland. You didn't do this, right?
No, this is this was years later. This one, yes.
I remember playing this.
So what they did, that they did I did my covers. Then, so I did them for 10, 11 years. Then Goosebumps stopped for a very short period of time, couple of years. Yeah. And then they started them back up. And then what they did to give them a fresh new look was the new ones got a new illustrator on it. Then they had the same illustrator redo my covers, but he kept the subject matter very similar. So they kind of look like mine, but they were done differently.
Gotcha.
And so that's why there's multiple versions of, what you just brought up of Horrorland and yeah. So there's mine and there's other ones too.
That's fascinating. I always love hearing just all of that. You did so many covers during all that time. Do you have any favorites?
I got a few favorites, but they change all the time. I like the ones that were a little more obscure. I'm a big fan of Egg Monsters from Mars.
That's a unique cover. See, I can, even when I haven't read the book, I instantly picture. Hang on, is it in the background? I swear I'm not cheating. It's not in the background. See, I still remember it. I'm sorry. Continue.
That's all right.
I'm pulling up the reference images.
Yeah, it was fun because the cover was, the description was odd. It wasn't like a giant egg or a killer egg. And I'm going, well, how am I, what do I got to do to make this interesting? And then I got into warping the perspective in any time that the characters were in a room. So you see the tile floor is all warped. So there isn't a straight line in the whole composition. So that kind of gives it a eerie or dreamlike or trippy look to it. And that warped perspective became something that I did regularly whenever I could, and kind of made it kind of a Goosebumps style.
Wow, that's so cool. So did you kind of do you feel that your covers got better over time, or that you?
I think so, yeah. Especially early on, it took me a while to get the idea that not only were we trying to be a little bit scary, but there's a lot of humor in the Goosebumps stuff.
Oh yeah, the Beast from the East.
Yeah, right. Beast from the East, or say cheese and die. That title alone makes you laugh.
Yeah.
So that concept again, going back to the Revenge of the Long Gnomes and the guy's picking his nose, trying to be a little funny along with being, some doing the light horror.
Yeah.
So, Egg Monsters from Mars was one that I liked a lot. again, concepts where it took me a while to go, oh, where's, what am I going to do? It came from beneath the sink. So that's a story about a killer sponge that lives under the sink. That was one where I was like, I'm not even sure where the scary part of this thing is.
I don't know if I remember this. That's a freaky cover.
Yeah, again, these were all the concept. Again, that 100% is R.L. Stine and his imagination, and I just love the concept of a killer sponge.
Oh, so that's a sponge. Okay, I see. I always find it interesting when it's like what, because they would have these questions that aren't answered on the cover, and you'd go.
Right.
Now that you say it's a sponge, I'm like,
nothing should be answered. It should all be total intrigue on the cover, and you got to find out what's going on inside.
And I think that they did that. I mean, Slappy the Dummy, you designed that character. I mean, that is such an iconic design. I mean, the Horrorland guys, like, or even the Haunted Mask, like those are such iconic design, especially Slappy. Slappy and Chucky were the two dolls that scared the crap out of me when I was a kid. Dolls. I mean, because again, I'm a 90s kid, quote unquote, because I was born in 99. But these things had a lasting impact, and I hope that kids today are still reading these books.
Well, it's cool because I was at a con this weekend, and it was called the 90s Con. Oh yeah. So everybody was there, for the 90s stuff. And so a lot of people who were, 10, 11 in the 90s, who are a little older than you are now married and have kids, and they're now turning them on to Goosebumps. And, they're going, yeah, I read them when I was a kid, and now he's 8 and he's starting to read them now. So yeah, there's a whole nother generation of Goosebumps fans coming up.
Dude, I'm gonna have to go back and read all these. And the ones I didn't, fill in the gaps. I really liked them. Do you have any other favorites?
I like How I Got My Shrunken Head.
Oh, that movie, or not the movie. That was always, to be fair, because I'd always be like, oh, they left so much out, but it's like they were given 20 minutes to do 100 pages.
Yeah, exactly.
How I Got My Shrunken Head. Jeez, that's a. So this one. I was looking at this too because there's a lot of storytelling on this cover. You got
and
that drawer, the sock.
Yeah, all the stuff. I mean, and that's I tried to do stuff that would be familiar. I mean, that was again loosely based on my baseball glove. The truck, that painting or drawing that's hanging on the wall. That was a drawing that I used to do for my son on his lunch bag when he was going to school. So these were all little things that I did just to entertain me. And of course, the overall theme that happened all the time is anytime you saw a kid's feet or there were sneakers, they were always Chuck Taylor high top all-star Converse sneakers. And that happens in 20 Goosebumps covers, easy.
Well, do you guys have a deal?
No, I just did it because I wear them. Hey, I got them on now. Yeah,
oh wow!
It's no more than I like wearing them.
That's so cool. And again, look at that angle too. Now I'm noticing.
See the warped perspective. There it all is. There isn't a straight line in there. It's all twisted and pulls up. But that also then gets you to focus on the shrunken head in his eyes.
That's cool. And did you were you allowed to put a real university or no?
No, had to keep it very generic. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, was there a university? I'm trying to remember because I remember this episode. A lot of these I remember the covers more than the thing itself, honestly. But to be fair, the show episodes, a lot of them you kind of watch them and then forget them. Like the books, if I read a book, it meant I knew the story better.
Yeah.
But some more memorable than others. But when you write every month, I mean, what he was able to churn out and what you were able to churn out.
The concepts were, one was wilder than the next.
It was nuts. It was really inventive stuff and definitely had an influence on me. And I'm glad I'm gushing about this. But those were good. I mean, so obviously you have your most popular and you have your personal favorites. I have a question. Are you into horror movies, or what did you channel from?
So I'm the most unhorror guy you ever met.
Really?
If I was 11 years old in 1994, I wouldn't have read a single Goosebumps book. I was the kid who would call his mom from the movie theater and say, "Mom, the movie's too scary. Come and pick me up." So maybe that was why I was the right guy for this job, because I didn't want to scare myself, let alone scare a bunch of kids.
That's so cool.
I prefer, it's not that I'm anti-horror. I prefer psychological horrors. I think anything that's, the idea of, something neurological is the theme to it. The horrors that can go on just in between your two ears is that's the real scary stuff. And anything that's based on any of that kind of concepts, I love those. I love that in movies. I love that in music. Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon, one of the greatest albums ever written. And it's, and Wish You Were Here. These are about somebody who's losing their mind.
I'm going to listen to that whole album. Listen in this
and put your headphones on. And put your headphones on.
Let's see. Yeah, in this podcast alone, like I have been writing down. Like whenever I'm looking off camera, I'm listening to you, and I'm
I'm good. I'm good.
And so that I've listened to that album obviously a couple of times, or maybe like once, but I never really thought about it.
Yeah, no. So
that's another iconic cover. It's very minimalist.
It was, it's Dark Side of the Moon. Put on your headphones. You only got to commit 40 minutes, and that's the full album, because they used to only get 20 minutes of music per side per vinyl, and it's and it tells a whole story, and it's a real masterpiece.
And just like that, we've gone full circle. We started talking about how you wanted to do album covers.
There you go, right?
And here we are. That's great. Yeah. And what did you, I'm just curious, what was because this was something I wanted to ask earlier. What is the biggest difference as an artist between doing an album cover and doing a book cover, when you were told that they're two different things?
There's most times, unless we just used the example of Dark Side of the Moon. There's a theme that's running through that. Usually albums are just individual short stories, and there isn't an overall theme. And so you're really coming up with something that may be specific to one song, or it's an image that the artist is interested in, where a book is a book and it's a single story, and you're conveying that imagery that's going with one specific theme and one specific image.
Gotcha. And one more question I wanted to ask is, what was the most challenging cover to draw Goosebumps?
We did one in the second series, Goosebumps series 2000, was called Invasion of the Body Squeezers. And the idea was we were going to do two covers in one painting, so that you would split it in half and you would buy both copies and be able to put them side by side. And so it was a giant piece. So where my other paintings were 20 by 30, this one was 30 by 40.
So it's two-parter.
Yeah. See, there's two covers that went together. That top image shows it the best.
I guess I never saw this second series. That's
and again, by then you're probably aged out of the thing.
Yeah, I mean maybe, but I was growing up during the 2000s. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's what's interesting too is that a lot of these are like homages, right? But I guarantee you, a lot of kids found out about this before Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Like sometimes, a lot of the stuff you did, like if I were to go back,
sometimes we were first, and sometimes we were tipping the cap to something that had already existed.
Yeah, I mean, like I knew about Night of the Living Dummy, and then when I heard Had an Adult, I was actually like, hanging out with like a friend's dad was like Night of the Living Dead, and I go, "You mean Night of the Living Dummy?" He was like, "What?"
Yeah.
I mean, no, I mean
right,
Night of the Living
exactly.
Dead. What are you talking about?
Yep.
You know, it was just funny the way that worked. But yeah, I mean, this stuff is so iconic. And if I ever did a horror story, I'd have to consider you for a cover. I mean, that would,
All right.
if you were ever, are you available for cover work for those watching?
I somewhat, yeah. Thankfully, all you guys are now grown up and you're doing cool stuff, and anybody who used to be a fan is being creative. And I have a very long waiting list.
That's
And
great.
yeah, and it's wonderful, and I couldn't be more thankful that you guys still remember this stuff and
Oh, yeah.
still think it's cool, because there's plenty of stuff you did when you were 11 that's not cool anymore. So
Oh, yeah.
the fact that you still think this is cool just is the greatest thing.
Yeah, I had, even if they're not all live now, some of them will probably tune in later. A ton of friends are like, "You're getting the Goosebumps guy?" Like, your covers really, like, again, ask anyone my generation and the one before, and hope maybe the next one. I don't know. I don't really talk to younger kids.
Well, they keep, what is great is, I talk to a lot of teachers and librarians, and the books are still there. And
That's
there's
great.
new generations of kids coming in every year, and the books are still there. So yeah, they're still having an impact.
That's great. I'm so glad to hear. Even like the word goosebump, I didn't know what a goosebump was until I was like, what is it? Because of this. I mean, these books, they did educate me. The teachers can get mad all they want, but I did learn stuff from these books. So, and now here I am. If I had listened to my teachers,
right,
or my
there
teacher and stopped reading it, I probably would have been fine, but like I wouldn't be interviewing you. So that's all good.
Exactly.
Thank you guys.
We both ended up here. How that all happened, I don't know, but we both ended up here tonight.
Oh yeah. Thank you so much for coming on. This has been a blast. We've been going for like an hour and a half, more than that, and I've enjoyed every second. If you ever wanted to come on again, I'd love to have you.
I appreciate the invite, and this was fun. And I'm very glad to hear that you're into it, and make sure you listen to Dark Side of the Moon.
I will absolutely listen to Dark Side of the Moon. I'm looking forward to seeing you at Garden State. If you ever want to come back again, I'd love to have you on.
Sure. That's June, right?
Yeah.
All right, cool. Have you been to that show before?
Yeah, I met you at that show last year, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's my third time going, but
awesome.
I'm excited, and I'm looking forward to this. If you ever want to come back again, you're more than welcome. Everyone, make sure to follow Tim. What's the best way for people to reach out to you?
Yeah, just follow me on Instagram. That's where every time there's a new piece of art, or I'm going to a con, I'm posting there. And the other place you can go is JacobusStudios.com, and you can buy Goosebumps prints there. And the thing that's great about that is $10 from every poster sale goes to buying food for the food bank down the street. And because you guys have been so cool, we've been able to fill up the back of my pickup truck every month and make a heck of a delivery to the food bank. So thank you very much to all you Goosebumps poster buyers.
Yeah, that's great. I didn't know that. Yeah, the link to that is in the description. And thank you so much. I have another interview tonight. And cool. So everyone who's watching, stay tuned for that. And until next time, I'll be seeing you. And I'm going to close out the stream with the trailer to my comic. Have a great night, guys. See you.
When the whole world was dragged into World War III, brave men like my father fought on the front lines. And they weren't alone. That was 20 years ago. Now it's up to us to carry on their legacy. And every so often, the earth from which we come gives way for something new. Something greater to be born. And with them, even greater threats to face. Bring it on! phenomenal. For you, Dad. For you.